Hello everyone, my name is Gary. Welcome back to the garage in Spain, the home of Arboleas Junction. This is the second of my videos in a two-part series showing me servicing and making repairs to the UV joints on the prop shafts of a couple of my Dapol Class 121 bubble cars. If you haven't seen the first part, I'll leave a link above and also one in the video description below. So in real terms, it's now the following day and the drying and curing process of the epoxy resin used has been completed. So without further ado, let's get back to the workbench and complete the project. Off camera, I've added some grease to the worm drive and to the wheel drive cogs. It's been applied very sparingly using only the tip of the darning needle. You'll also see that I've inserted the prop shafts back into the worm gear housings. Now, after making sure the arms of the UV joint lined up exactly with the two cross slits in the housing, I gently ease the UV joint in using the end of a flat-ended screwdriver. Make sure though that this action is the primary pressure and don't be tempted to use more force than necessary on the shaft itself, otherwise you'll find the shaft will crack through the glue and the joint will be useless. Now the UV joint should pop snugly in with a tiny dull click. Now remembering to use the correct openings in the bridge for the power feed cables and using two of the standard machine screws, secure the bridge to the bogie and make sure that the cables haven't been snagged. Next up, it's the final round of essential lubrication. Now first, using the correct modelling oil obviously, add the smallest drop of oil to each of the four axles and give the prop shaft a bit of a turn, and that'll make sure that that's well lubricated. Now we need to apply grease to the UV joint proper. Now carefully apply just sufficient to work into and around the space without it oozing out when you eventually spin the prop shaft. I usually give this quite a few turns to make sure there's sufficient in there and it feels nice and smooth. It goes without saying that you would do this to both sets of bogies. Now it's time to reassemble the loco. We're starting with putting both bogies back into the chassis. Now take care to ensure that the power feed cables aren't snagged between the bogie and the chassis and that the prop shaft isn't pushed too far off centre from the UV housing. And you may find that a pair of tweezers will come in handy to help pull the cables through properly. Now it's the turn to replace the motor, a simple reversal of when you removed it. Now if necessary, turn the prop shaft rather than the motor to ensure that the UV joint slips into the housing, and remember not to push the motor fully home into its mounting space until you've secured both shafts into the motor housings. Once it's secured, make sure that you just rock both sides of the motor backwards and forwards, ensuring that the worm gears at both ends are moving. Once you're happy that nothing is snagging, use the four machine screws to secure the motor into its spot. Now comes the fiddliest part of the assembly. When fitting the PC plate, make certain that the power cables do not get trapped between the plate and the chassis. Again, you might have to use tweezers if necessary for this. Once that's done, secure the plate to the chassis with the 2 standard machine screws in each directionally opposite corner, and tuck the light panels into their slots at each end of the chassis. Now it's time to use the 2 captive washer screws. Carefully secure the bogies to the chassis, and it's important to tighten these screws softly, as by over tightening you will reduce the small clearance tolerance between the underside of the chassis and the bogie, and this can cause problems on the curves and when you drive over points. So only the tiniest of tightening. Once you get there, a little pinch, that's all, no more. Next, it's time to solder the 6 power cables back onto the PCB. Take your time here and check that each joint is firmly attached before you proceed. Okay, after a final visual check, it's time to place the loco onto a suitable test track. Here I'm checking for slow, forward and reverse movement and correct lighting modes, and it's obviously better to check now than after the body is fitted. Once you're happy that everything's working correctly, you can refit the floor and seats and use the 4 countersunk machine screws, not the 6 that I originally said in the first video. Next, you can carefully replace the body shell, and again make sure that you use a good angle so that the exhaust pipes at the bottom don't get snagged under that chassis. And finally, with the loco back on the main truck, I'm just running it slowly forward and then in reverse, checking both the lights again, forward and back. And the slow movement is absolutely superb. Well, I hope you found this second of the 2 videos helpful, and that I trust that between them they've shown that some of the loco repairs and servicing can be relatively easy to complete yourselves. I have to emphasise though that this is my method of carrying out such works, and other modelers and model supply companies will have their own procedures in place. If you have any constructive questions or advice regarding the content, please drop me a message in the comment section below the video. Now, if overall you found this video useful, please consider hitting the like button. I would also love for you to subscribe to my channel. After all, subscribing is free, and if you do subscribe, remember to hit the little bell icon so that you're notified when my next video content is uploaded. In the meantime, stay safe and well and enjoy your modelling. Cheerio for now.